Our next objective is to create a services form. So to get started, we're going to go into New. We're going to go into Google Forms. And we're simply going to title this Services. Okay, and it updates here. And we'll first start off with just simply client name, and then we're going to go with make that a short answer. Our next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to populate this. Now, how we're going to get this populated, we're going to do it by our add-on called Form Ranger, which we've used before. It doesn't detect anything because we made a short answer. What we need to do is go to drop down. Now that we have drop down, we're going to refresh the questions, and now we're going to say populate from values list. We're going to select a new values list. It's going to ask us where we're going to go. And the last two times we populated anything, we went from the lists. But this time we're going to do a little different. Instead of going to lists, we're actually going to go into our assessment spreadsheet. And what we want to do is we want the client name to be populated. Now, we only have 3 people that has been assessed hypothetically, and so there's only 3 responses so far, but we do have the right list. So we're going to hit next, and we're going to say this is the client names from the assessment spreadsheet. Okay. Alright, it populates our names right here. Now, here's the thing. It's normally good to have them in alphabetical order, and if we want that, what we do is we go back into our Google Drive, we go into our assessments, we simply just go alphabetical order. We can see 2 clients should be behind 3 client if it's going to be in alphabetical order. Now, of course, you don't have to do this if it's a very small agency. It's not really necessary to have everything sorted, but we can just leave this list, the assessment list, just sorted in alphabetical order. We can go back to our services, and we're going to hit refresh list. Now we see 1 client, 2 client, 3 client. Now, of course, that goes in order of who we assessed, and I just made up the name 1, 2, 3, but that's actually not in alphabetical order. What we're going to do is we're just going to hit the refresh again. Okay, and now it's sorted in alphabetical order. The only problem is in this assessment, every time you make a new assessment, Google Docs does not update the ascending order. It'll simply, like, say if somebody's last name starts with an A, maybe Atkins, I'm just going to type something in, it would just Johnny. Okay, I don't really know anybody by that name, and this is how it'll leave it. In order to resort it, you would have to go back in manually and sort the sheet again, A to Z. And if you went into services and refreshed, you would see Johnny Atkins is the very first entry. So we're going to go back into this. We're going to actually delete this. We're just going to delete this whole row. Now, going back into services, we have this populated. I'm going to refresh this list again, and it's back to the way it was. It is sorted in alphabetical order, but just Atkins is not there. Okay, we want this to refresh itself on every time you submit a form. This form, if you submit a different form, it will not repopulate. You have to submit a services form for it to repopulate this client name list. We want it to go every hour, and we're just going to close out of this. We'll go back to that later, because later on we're going to have staff member names. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add. We're just going to add a service. Service, and we're going to make that a drop down. I'm not going to populate it now. I'm going to populate it just a little bit later. So I want to do everything at once. And we're going to have date dash time, and I'm going to make this a date there, and I'm going to include the time. The next thing I'm going to do is go down here to multiple choice, and I'm going to change that to drop down, and I'm going to call this staff member. I'm not going to populate it. I will make it required. I will make the date and time required, and I will make the service required. I'm not actually going to make this required. What if a brand new client comes in, he hasn't been assessed, his name isn't going to pop up. So what we do is we need a spot for him. So what we're going to do is click up here, and then I'm going to add something underneath it, and I'm going to put in new client name. Make that a short answer. I'm not going to make it required because there's no reason to type anything in here if the client is found up above. And of course, you can call this anything you want. You can call this unassessed client. And then call this one assessed, because the thinking is anybody who's been assessed will be in this list. Anybody who's not been assessed should have their name typed in under here. But I'm just going to go under client name like I had it, and I'm going to go new client name, because it's going to be assumed that whoever is brand new has not been assessed. Okay, I will not make it required, as I said. And I have the date, and I have the time, and I have the staff member. Now I'm going to start populating. Once again, we're going to go into Form Ranger, and we want to populate service with the services in our service list. Okay, it's loading, and here's what we want. We want service. We're not quite ready to check this because we want to go in and go into our templates and lists. Go into our lists. Went to our list folder. Now we're in our list sheet, and our list sheet has staff members and it has services. I'm going to leave that one blank, and I'm going to say laundry. If you want to keep track of these things, clothing, shower, computer lab, tutoring, or if it's a very small agency and you are doing bedding or allowing people to sleep on a premises, you can go ahead and put that here. But I don't recommend this if you're a large agency. It's recommended you have an HMIS type of setup for that. Now this can offer a bed check-in and check-out system through Google Docs, but it is also for a smaller agency. Let's just put a new service or unlisted service. Here's what I think I'll do. I think I'll change it from a drop-down list to something else, because this is a very small form anyways. So I'm going to delete this, and to move it all up, back into our services form. And instead of doing a drop-down list, I think I'm going to make this into a multiple choice. Okay, because it gives me the option to add an other. on this. I'm going to populate it. I'm going to select it from a new values list. We're going to go into our lists, select, and we're going to go, instead of staff members, we're going to go services, and we'll go next, and we'll go services dash lists. Okay, save and populate questions. Alright, and we have this. I'm going to make an other. That way, it'll give a line so that if there's a service that's not listed, you can just type it in here. So I think that'll work. Time of day, we're gonna do staff member. We're gonna populate and have to go new values list because staff member isn't listed in this form. Go back to lists. Go back to, it's automatically on staff members, which is good, and we're going to hit next, and we're going to say staff members lists. Okay, everything's populated, ready to go. Okay, on form submit, everything's on. I'm going to refresh the questions just in case. Alright. It does have an other. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, we're just going to choose a client name for a service. We're going to do 3 client, clothing, AM. Staff member, we'll just say brown staff, and we'll submit. And client name, let's do 1 client, computer lab services, and give them another staff member name. Go back into our services form, and what we're going to do is just create a sheet. So this looks pretty good. Going back into services, going back into the form, we're going to add something. We're not going to have staff member required anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to say new staff member name, and we're going to make this a short answer. This is if we select new staff member name or new staff member, and we're going to give it a description, and we won't make that required. So let's just say we put this up above staff member, or well, tell you what, for showing you what our purposes is, I'm going to put staff member name in between above the date, just because I want to show you. I want you to know, see, staff member name on the sheet is at the very end still. It does not go in between the date, even though we moved it physically on the form. We moved it physically above the date. It still goes at the end of the sheet here. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. After you submit the sheet, anything you include, any changes you make, will automatically be appended to the very last column of your response sheet. Okay, so I'm going to move staff member name back to where it should be, at the bottom. It's not going to let me, so why don't I just move staff member above. There we go, and that'll work. And we're pretty much done. The services tab is pretty easy. This has been the services form. Our next video will be bed lists.